بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأما من خاف مقام ربه ونهى النفس عن الهوى فإن الجنة هي المأوى آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, the enlightenment of the hearts, the acceptance of the deeds, and for the hastening of the reappearance of the awaited Savior, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, enlighten your souls, purify the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Respected elders, sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. There was a young man who was a Christian, lover of literal texts to do with literature. And he used to sit next to a river in his village in Lebanon. He was a young man and he used to read books regarding the Arabic texts. And one day his brother came to him and said to him, I'd like you to read this book because this book is phenomenal as far as the way it is structured in the Arabic language. So the young boy said, very well. He picked up this book and he fell in love with it. He read it once, he read it again next to a river in his village, until he said, in my lifetime I read it 40 times. Then he went to university. Then he came back and said, I wish to write a book detailing the life of the author of that book that I read next to the river. Because he has won my heart. He has inspired me. So he writes a book. It is then published by the Christian village, distributed by the Christian community. The book is called The Voice of Human Justice, Ali ibn Abi Talib. And the author is George Jordak, who is famously known as the Arab historian, Christian author. When he came back after writing this book and publishing this book, he says, I entered my house. My father, who was also not a Muslim, but a carpenter, had already prepared something which is at the entrance of the house. He had carved it from wood. And it was there right at the entrance. He said, as soon as I entered, I looked at it and I smiled. I knew my father had read my book about the life of Ali ibn Abi Talib, because he had something huge carved out at the entrance of our house. What it said in Arabic was, La fata illa Ali, wa la sayfa illa dhul fiqar. There is no youth like Ali. There is no sword like dhul fiqar. When it comes to the merits, the excellence, the fada'il, the greatness of the commander of the faithful, Ali ibn Abi Talib, peace and blessings be upon him, one struggles to know where to begin. Shall I talk about the mercy of Ali, or shall I talk about the justice of Ali? Shall I speak about the courage of Ali, or shall I speak about the eloquence of Ali? When it comes to the merits of this individual, shall I describe his spirituality, or shall I talk about how he was the father for the ummah? Shall I speak about the proximity to the Holy Prophet that he had, or shall I describe how he ensured that Islam is saved? There are so many aspects when it comes to detailing the life of this great individual. But tonight, in the next few minutes, I'd like to describe one aspect of his life that perhaps is not looked at in the angle that I wish to look at, and that is the sport of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Somebody asks, the world of sport today takes up a lot of the efforts and the times of human beings. In that, sport occupies a central position in either participation or viewing around the world. Millions of people play sports. Billions of people watch sports, from different sporting activities that you find at the global stage or at the national level. Different countries have different sporting tournaments. Youth and others take part in sport. Men and women participate in sporting activity. As far as the health of the human being, we're told that sport is good for the physical nourishment, for the strengthening of the body. Exercise is deemed to be necessary for a healthy body, for a healthy mind. something that the religion of Islam advocates, something that the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indeed emphasize. For we find that the Holy Prophet, Al-Rasul Al-A'zam, wa Nabi Al-Akram, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, is someone who tells you and I, make sure you exercise your body, make sure you play sports. The Prophet is narrated to have said, Inna li badanika alayka haqqa. Your body has a right over you. The Prophet is also narrated to have said, Allah loves those who have a stronger body than those who have a weaker body. Meaning what? Meaning the Quran gives us examples of Musa alayhi salam who had a proper physique. Quran tells us of Talut, the king that Allah chose for the Israelites. Allah says, I gave him strength as well as knowledge. زَادَهُ بَسْطَةً فِي الْعِلْمِ وَالْجِسْمِ. We are told of individuals in Islamic history who were blessed to have this strength. Similarly, the AHLULBAYT alayhum salam, they were the best as far as what? As far as every aspect of human development is concerned, as well as sport. You say to me, really? We have example after example of the Prophet of Islam encouraging playing sports and encouraging others to do so. The Messenger of God says the believers, the father and the sons have a right over the father must teach them swimming, archery, horse riding. These are specifically mentioned, the sports by the Messenger of God. Doesn't mean these are the only 3 sports that today we should play. It was those that were involved at that time, predominantly established at the time of the Messenger of God and the Ahlul Bayt. May God's peace and blessings be upon them all. Yet there is encouragement when it comes to this. There is indeed reward for people who do it for the sake of Allah. And that's why you find the narration in Biharul Anwar that one day the Prophet of Islam came where he came to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidah Fatima, peace and blessings be upon them, and saw Imam al-Hasan al-Hussein alayhim salam there. The riwayah which I read said, he looked at Imam al-Hasan, he looked at Imam al-Hussein and said to them, I want you to wrestle. Start wrestling each other. So they begin to wrestle each other in front of the Prophet and Sayyidah Fatima. The riwayah does not mention Amir al-Mu'mineen, perhaps he was out or perhaps he was there. But when they begin to wrestle in front of each other, the Prophet does something which surprises Sayyidah Fatima, peace be upon them all. The Prophet begins to encourage Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam and says to him, come on, O Hasan, you can do it. The Lady of Light looks at the Prophet and said, Ya Rasulullah, I see you just encouraging my son Hasan. Why are you just doing that for Imam al-Hasan? For just one son. The Holy Prophet looks at her and says to her, it is because next to me I see and hear Jibreel saying, come on, O Hussein. Yes. In the idea that the Prophet of Islam wanted to balance, yes, that he was supporting Imam al-Hasan and Jibreel was pushing for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. This is one indication that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam did not have any problems with some sporting activity, in the recognition that when it comes to the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Mawla al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Many times you and I associate the bravery, the courage, the fact that Amir al-Mu'mineen was somebody that people were afraid of his sword, afraid of his strength. No doubt. Did this somehow become something of a feature of Imam without work that the Imam had? No doubt there is some kind of perhaps genetic or hereditary element. But it also highlights that Imam alayhi salam was somebody that looked after his body without shadow of a doubt. In the idea that Imam alayhi salam undoubtedly exercised, Imam alayhi salam would perform certain sports, because we are told when people would see him and immediately indeed see his sword emerge, they would tremble. When they see Ali ibn Abi Talib, whether it's in the battlefield or outside the battlefield, they would not even want to have any encounter with him. There was a lady who was in Medina and made her way towards Mecca. She was a spy. She wanted to tell the Meccans, the Quraysh, that the Muslim army is coming to conquer the Mecca. This was in the year 8 after Hijrah. The Prophet wanted it secret. He sent Amir al-Mu'mineen and whom? And Zuhair ibn Awam, this particular cousin of the Prophet. He said to him, them both, go and get this letter that she has written and stop her from getting to Mecca. She's on her way. Amir al-Mu'mineen goes with Zuhair. Yes. When they reach her, this lady looks at them and says, why are you here? They said, you are on your way to Mecca. She said, yes. They said to her, you have written a letter which details the plan of the Muslims to conquer Mecca. She said, no, there's no such thing. They said, no, you must have. She said, here, you can look for my belongings. So they searched her bag. They could not find the letter. This man, this individual, looks at her and says what? He said that I will then go back. That's Zubair. He said, I will not. The individual, I will not go and do anything else. The Prophet said that you have a letter, but maybe you didn't bring it with you. Amir al-Mu'mineen looked at him and said, you know what? If the Prophet said, then she must have the letter. I will not leave until she gives me the letter. So Ibn al-Awam looks at him and says, what do you want to do? He said, leave it. Imam takes out his sword and says, I will not leave until you give me the letter. Now she begins to shake. When she sees Ali ibn Abi Talib with the sword, she then says, turn away. I have put the letter in the folds of my hair. So she takes out the letter and gives it to Amir al-Mu'mineen. And therefore Amir al-Mu'mineen was recognized as somebody who has strength, who had courage, who had valor. This is something you and I associate with. But the question that arises today, and that is, what was the main sporting activity of the Imam? I'm sure most of you would love to know, what is it that Imam alayhi salam did to give him courage and strength? What are the hallmarks of his exercise? Please pay attention. The next few minutes we'll unravel an important dimension of what made Ali this man. Yes, what made him so superior to everyone other than Rasulullah? And how did he learn from the Messenger of God? The answer is found in Nahjul Balagha. He comes forward and says, إِنَّمَا هِيَ نَفْسِي أُرَوِّضُهَا بِالتَّقْوَى. It's my soul, I exercise it. I am an individual who exercises. But the exercise of the commander of the faithful was an exercise that you and I must do to become strong human beings. And that is related to the nafs, to the soul. In the idea that the soul, like the body, requires exercise because it's a muscle within. Without exercise, it will become weak, it will waste, and it needs to be stretched. It needs to be kept healthy, just like how our muscles need to be kept healthy. Most of us, when it comes to exercise of the body, we do press-ups, we go to the gym, we do some activities, running, walking. This is necessary because our health of the heart and our muscle needs to be maintained. How many of us have pondered, my soul, does it need exercise or not? It definitely does. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes forward and says, do you want to know my secret? One of the secrets of the commander of the faithful is that he says, I also exercise my soul. I have developed a mechanism of the exercise of the nafs. إِنَّمَا هِيَ نَفْسِي أُرَوِّضُهَا. The Arabic word for sports and exercise is what? Riyadha. Today if you go in the Arab world and you say, I want to play riyadha, they say, which riyadha, which sports? Amir al-Mu'mineen says that it is my soul, I need to have some kind of sporting activity with it. Question, how? What does this mean? Can you elaborate a bit further? You might say, yes. We believe that our nafs is a wild creation of God, like a wild animal. And if it's not exercised and tamed and controlled, then it leads us astray. Inna an-nafsa la'ammaratun bis-su'. Yes, you and I recognize, the Quran says that we must be in control of our desire and our nafs. And the only way to be in control is to exercise it. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen comes forward and gives us tips on how to play this important sport with our soul. Please pay attention in the next few minutes so that we can indeed be illuminated and inspired by the commander of the faithful. He comes forward and says, this happens through taqwa. إِنَّمَا هِيَ نَفْسِي أُرَوِّضُهَا بِالتَّقْوَى. that taqwa is the number one tool to ensure that my muscle within stretches. What does this refer to? This refers to the all-important subject of self-control and willpower. How many times in our lives we've seen successful individuals, major businessmen, people who are successful sportsmen and women. One of the most detrimental, important factors in their lives is that they had great willpower. Willpower is a subject today that millions of people read about. They buy books, self-help, TED Talks, etc. It's a desperate human need to improve the will within us, to do what we ought to be doing, not what we want to be doing. That's the difference. Many a times we want to do certain things, but it's not good for us. That's not willpower. Willpower is to do what we ought to be doing. Sometimes we have projects, sometimes we have tasks, sometimes we have responsibilities. I want to improve in the month of Ramadan, to become closer to Allah, improve my akhlaq, perform namaz ashab, do more charity, help more the community. But then I'm put off. But then somehow I am not as encouraged. I'm not as inspired. I need to somehow figure out how to strengthen the will within me. Because how many times we've heard, when there is a will, there is what? Some people say there is family, but that's another will. Yes? In the idea that when there is a will, there is a way. Most of us are able to recognize the correlation of the determination, what the Quran called azm. Quran calls this notion of azm, irada, determination to do something. And we all love to be inspired to have a stronger willpower. And the month of Ramadan is the month of willpower. You say to me, how? I say, now during the day when you are fasting and you are alone and you are tempted to eat something and there is no one watching, would you eat? No. Despite nobody knowing that you will eat, you know that your roza fast will be broken and that Allah is watching, you will not eat. Subhanallah, the moment Eid day comes, it's as if we forget Allah is watching. Now we do things despite it being haram, but also know that Allah is watching. What the month of Ramadan seeks to do is enhance the muscle within, and that is what? The will. Question: how does Amir al-Mu'mineen teach us to strengthen the muscle within and to exercise it? These are practical tips that I will present to you from the life of the commander of the faithful, peace and blessings be upon him. One day, he was passing by a shopkeeper who sells meat. So the keeper said to him, Ya Ali, why don't you get some meat for you? Imam alayhi salam says, Laysa thamanu hadira. I don't have the money for it. The shopkeeper said, Ana asbiru ala thaman. Don't worry, I'll be patient. Whenever you want to give me, I'll accept. Take the meat and I'll take the money later. What did Imam say? Wa ana asbiru ala laham. No, I will be patient and not eat meat. What does this indicate? A very powerful tool that requires your attention for the next few minutes, because if you switch off, you are guaranteed to misunderstand me. I have said this a few times on majalis. When I finish, people come and tell me, no, but you said something else, because your mind goes off. The next 2 minutes, come back to me. What I'm about to tell you is very sensitive and delicate and can only be applied by those who wish to go on this journey of strengthening the muscle within. We are told the nafs desires, wants, yearns comfort, yearns delicious food, yearns to do things which give it enjoyment. Do you agree? Now, one important step that the Imam alayhi salam is teaching us here, and that is from the Quran, and that is in order for me to have strong willpower to do that which makes me stronger against desires which are haram, because that's the whole objective, isn't it? Yes, it's good willpower to have to lose weight. It's good willpower to have to stop smoking. These are all great. But the biggest and the best willpower to have is that which enables us to say no to temptations which are forbidden. Do you agree? So, how do I say no when there is a clip on my phone that I am tempted to watch? Or there is something that I would like to listen? Or I'm sitting in a gathering and the life of a mu'min or a mu'minah is torn to pieces through ghiba, backbiting and slander. How do I stop myself from doing what some people do and say no? How? There is a prelude to this. Many people struggle to say no to this. Why? Because they haven't worked at the stage before. The stage before involves training the soul not to be given whatever it wants when it comes to halal and mubah. Please pay attention. That means sometimes I desire some things. It's hot, I desire ice cream, for example. My nafs tells me, it's nice to have ice cream. Most of us say, yeah, I'm fancying an ice cream. So you grab an ice cream from the freezer. You agree? Those who come forward from the school of Ali ibn Abi Talib and say, if you want your nafs to be strong, you mustn't give it all the time what it wants. You have to go against it. The Quran says, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. You go against the nafs when it comes to desires. You say to me, what do you mean? Can you explain? I need some practical example. This is a story that happened during the time of the sixth holy Imam, Ja'far al-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Imam, peace be upon him, is told there is a priest who is changing people from Muslim to Christianity because he is able to do something special. And people love it when they see someone who's doing something like a magical trick. But the problem was, this was not a magical trick, it was real. What was this priest able to do? He was able to see that which is normally hidden. So if you hide something behind your hands or behind, for example, a pillar, and you say to him, what's hidden there? He will be able to tell you what's hidden there. He had this knowledge. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam summoned him and said to him, tell me about your life. The priest said to him that in my life, what I have taught myself is, whenever there is a need for comfort, I go against it. Whenever my soul wants cold water in the summer, I drink hot water. I don't listen to my desires, even when it comes to simple things. Imam said to him, very well, I would like you to tell me what I am holding in my hand. Imam had something in his hands. Tell me, what have I holding? The man began to shake and sweat. According to the riwayah, he began to shake. Imam said to him, why are you shaking? He said, because I see something in your hands that I have never seen in my life. He said, describe to me what you're seeing. He said, I can see gardens, I can see beautiful trees, and I can see something which looks to me like what I would imagine paradise would be. Imam said, yes, because what I have in my hands is soil from the grave of my grandfather Hussein. Allahumma salli ala. Imam al-Sadiq then looks at him and says, your nafs now, what is it telling you? He said, my nafs is telling me this man has part of Jannah in his hands. Therefore his religion must be true. Run away, because you might become Muslim soon. Imam says, then what have you done all your life? He said, I have practiced to go against my nafs. He said, are you going to do it now? He said, yes. What are you going to do? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam alayhi salam congratulates him for becoming a Muslim. Next day there is a queue of people waiting to see this miracle that this man has. When he comes, he's no longer able to see that which is hidden. It's gone. He rushes to Imam al-Sadiq. He said to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, what has happened? I've become a Muslim now. I can't see what I used to see before. Imam says to him, before Allah was rewarding you for going against your desires. Now that you've become a Muslim, your reward is in Akhirah. You don't need this now. It's gone. Don't worry about it now. What is Imam trying to tell us here, according to the riwayah? Going against the desire of the nafs in things which are halal or mubah is what is strengthening, is empowering. Because many of us struggle when it comes to desires. We can't say no because our soul is in control of us. Our desires is riding us. But we need to be the rider that tames it. We need to be in control of it. So if I'm not giving it whatever it wants, when it's mubah, when it's something not halal or haram, just normal, then I can also say no to it at moments of what? Slippery temptations. I can say no, yes. And hence this is the first lesson in the exercise of the soul. If I want to exercise the nafs, I need to do this. Yes, that's number one. Number two, Amir al-Mu'mineen comes forward and tells us an important tip. And that is what? He says one of the areas of the exercising of the soul is through akhlaq. رَوِّضُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ عَلَى الْأَخْلَاقِ الْحَسَنَةِ. Amir al-Mu'mineen says another form of sport of the nafs is to develop an affinity to improve your mannerism and your system of ethics. Subhanallah. Many people today won't talk about the relationship between willpower and akhlaq. Somehow not linked. Ali ibn Abi Talib says it's linked. The way you deal with people has direct relevance to the muscle within. Subhanallah. It needs some time to describe. And sadly, I have very short amount of time. But as summary, I will say this, that one of the features of the commander of the faithful was this, that the Holy Prophet of Islam famously said, according to riwayah in Fara'id al-Samtain, لو كان الحلم رجلا لكان علي. If forbearance was a human being, it would have been Ali. Do you know what forbearance is? Forbearance is not forgiveness. Hilm is the ability to calm oneself down and to control the anger when I have the chance to exercise it and to be revengeful. That is hilm. Because sometimes, for example, you have 5, 6 people who are stronger than you and they've hurt you. And you say, you know what, I didn't reply back to them. Of course, you don't stand a chance against them. But sometimes somebody who is who is weaker than you, or you have the ability to devastate their life because of what they did to you. If you, as a person, become an individual who holds back and are able to control your desires and your anger, you have exercised hilm. Amir al-Mu'mineen says that is a great sport for your soul. One day, the commander of the faithful saw someone who has been talking about him ill in society. Imagine. Please put yourself in the position of the Imam alayhi salam. God forbid, here in Orlando or anywhere, somebody who is spreading rumors about you everywhere. Saying this person is like this, don't pray behind him or her, he is doing this. How would you treat him or her? They came to the Imam. That person who's spreading rumors against Ali ibn Abi Talib came to him and said, Ya Ali, I need your help. Needs the help of Imam. After speaking so much ill of him, Imam said, very well, what do you need? How can I help you? And he helped him. Imam made him what? And fulfilled his wishes. The companions of Ali came to him and said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, he speaks ill of you and you help him? Look at the answer of Imam. He says, Inni astahyi an yaghliba jahlahu hilmi. I am embarrassed. I am afraid that his ignorance becomes greater than my forbearance. Allahu Akbar. He says, no way his ignorance becomes greater than my forbearance. وَذَنْبُهُ عَفْوِي. I don't want his sin to be greater than my forgiveness. وَمَسْأَلَتُهُ جُودِي. And his need to be greater than my generosity. I'm not going to let that happen. Yes, that is greater. Yes, and therefore the element of hilm is of the utmost importance. The improvement of the akhlaq. The Prophet of Islam sees someone who is quite built and he's lifting massive rocks. Bodybuilder. And there's a huge number of people around him saying, MashaAllah, he's so strong. So the Prophet stops. So the Muslims look at the Prophet and say, Ya Rasulullah, look at how amazing strong he is. The Prophet says, shall I tell you who's stronger than him? They say, yes, who? Tell us. People love this kind of thing, yes? Who's stronger than this man with a muscle? The person who is able to control their anger when they're able to revenge. That's hilm. Prophet saying the strength of the muscle within the nafs, if you are stronger, you are indeed more powerful than the person who has muscles. Because that's harder than lifting the rocks and the weights. When you are able to damage a person or speak ill of them, but you hold yourself back for the sake of Allah, then you are in the path of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Yes, then you're in the path of hilm. Then you are exercising your soul. Because what you're saying messages to your nafs. You're saying, I'm in control. You want me to speak ill of that person, to seek revenge of that person or that group of people, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it for the sake of Allah. I am in control and I know exactly how to live my life. The final recommendation, and there are so many, from the illustrious, glorious life of the Commander of the Faithful in the journey, and it is a journey of refining our souls and becoming of those who exercise it, is time management. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes forward and says, if you want to be of those who is in control of your nafs, ensure that you do not allow time to be wasted. The problem today that we have is, there are people who think time belongs to them, whereas time belongs to Allah. The seventh holy Imam, peace be upon him, says, there are two things people will be mostly remorseful about on the day of Qiyamah: excessive sleep and boredom. You know, people have so much time, and I really can't understand when someone says, I have time to kill. Ajib. Time to kill? Why are you killing time? Time is precious, is more valuable than gold. Yes? And people say, yeah, I was sitting waiting for someone, I had like half an hour time to kill. Use it. Now you have the whole world at your fingertip, not just for scrolling on Instagram and Facebook and seeing the affairs of others. Maybe have articles ready that improve your iman, or improve your knowledge, or some reflections that you type on your notes, or whatever. Use the time effectively, and that sends a signal to your nafs that it can't indeed be free to explore the 24 hours the way that it actually wants. That's why indeed the Commander of the Faithful was seen by people as individual whom they should seek for justice and for equity. Why? Because they knew he was in control of his desires. So he would not be somebody who would rule in accordance with his nafs. He would rule in accordance with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On that hot midday in Kufa, where the sun was scorching, a woman is kicked out of her house by her husband. She walks in the streets of Kufa, there's no one outside because it's so hot, no one can bear to be outside. But she finds one man sitting next to his door. She comes to him and she notices that that is the Khalifa of the Muslims, the Imam chosen by Allah, none other than Amir al-Mu'mineen. She finds him in there and he looks at her and says, oh, the servant of God, what makes you out on this midday heat? She says, Ya Ali, my husband has kicked me out. I have nowhere to go. Imam says, justice does not wait. I'm not gonna tell you go back, come back later when it's cooler. Let's go. He takes her, they go to the house. It's the unfortunate thing that that man had never seen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Because when he opens the door, he sees a man with his wife. Can I help you? Imam says, for the sake of Allah, take your wife back. This is not how you should be doing things. You're kicking her out of the house in this heat of the day. Take her back. The man becomes enraged with anger. You see, that's the problem. When we start putting two together. Today in Jum'ah we spoke about suspicion. When I begin to put suspicion over suspicion, the man looked at Imam and said, because you have intervened, I am going to not only not take her back, but I'm going to beat her too. Well, how dare you? Who are you to intervene? Imam sees that the language of dialogue does not work with this man. So one thing has to come out. Dhul Fiqar. And when Dhul Fiqar comes, not a human being can mess with it. Yes. Dhul Fiqar, immediately Imam takes his sword out. The man looks at him and says, you are Ali ibn Abi Talib? He falls on the ground and says, Wallah, I will take her back and do whatever you say. But the justice of Ali has no limits, because it's the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why, on a night like this, the whole of Kufa was in mourning. We are told that the levels of cries were never heard except in Medina when the Prophet left this world. There were a group of people in Kufa who were the most distraught. These group of young people were the ones that saw in Ali a loving father that no one else was filling. It's not just a title when we say Ali was the father of the orphans. Riwayah tells us on the day of Eid in one of the years, the orphans are playing and there is one young orphan, he's standing there with tears in his eyes. Amir al-Mu'mineen passes by, comes down to him and says, my son, why are you crying? He says, everyone has new clothes, but I don't. Imam says, come with me. He takes him, gives him new clothes and sends him. Now he comes. Everyone looks at him. Now he's wearing beautiful clothes. They say to him, we thought that you don't have clothes and you are fatherless and you're orphan. He says, from today I have a new father. My father is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Yes. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. And so can you imagine on a night like this, these aitam who were used to being fed by Mawla Amir al-Mu'mineen, their hearts broken. Who is going to look after them now? Yes. They have already gone through the loss of their parents, but now this tragedy is even greater. Because we can only begin to imagine the musibah of the heavens before the earth. How much were the malaika in tears? How much were the malaika mourning the departure of Ali ibn Abi Talib in this way, as the man of love and compassion towards all, the role model, the exemplar for people. A life without Ali is not worth living, and those around him indeed would express this to the Imam. Yes. That is why those last moments of his life were the most difficult for his family members, when they would indeed be throwing themselves on the body of their father, who is bidding his farewell by reciting istighfar, by reciting the remembrance of Allah, asking them to be patient. Remember, he gave them this famous will of his. He asked them to have taqwa. He asked them to adhere to salah, to look after orphans. He asked them to mend the relations of the people. He asked them to look after the Quran. He told them, make sure that you do not mutilate the body of my killer, and so on, and feed him just like how you feed me. In one riwayah I saw, Allah broke my heart. It is said in the final hour or two of the life of Imam, he was given yogurt or milk to drink. The moment he began to drink, he stopped. They said to him, Father, why have you stopped? He said, I've just remembered, have you fed Ibn Muljam? Allah. Look at the heart of Ali. He's about to leave this world. The pain of the poison all around his body. His head is split. And yet he thinks about his killer. Yes. What a man is Ali. What heart did Ali have? Yes. This heart that was full of love for everyone, including those who indeed wanted to end his life. That's why on that final moments he looked towards his family members. When he looked at Imam Al-Hassan, he would say to him, my son Hassan, you will be poisoned and you will depart this world to the extent that your liver will be indeed thrown out of your body. He will look at Imam Al-Hussein. He will say to him what will happen on the plains of Karbala. Ask him to be patient. Ask the ladies to be patient. But you know, those moments can never be described. The hearts of these AHLULBAYT, you know, what were they going through? Having had to bid farewell a few years earlier to the Holy Prophet, then to Sayyidatun Nisa Fatima, now to Amir al-Mu'mineen in this state. Sayyidah Zainab immediately looks at her father. She begins to see he's sweating. She asks him, Father, why are you sweating? She says, oh my daughter Zainab, when a believer begins to sweat, this means death has come to them. This means they're about to leave this world. He asks for his feet to face the Qibla. He extends his hands. There's cries next to him. He closes his eyes. He recites Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Then he closes his eyes due to the cries of the AHLULBAYT. They are all around him. These are the final moments, and the life and the soul of Ali leaves his body. Ay rahim Allahu man nada wa aliya wa madluma wa shahida. The riwayah says that Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein, yes, after the mourning, after the crying for their father, the whole of Kufa was rocking with the tears of the people, that Ali is gone, there's no longer Ali ibn Abi Talib. They washed the body carefully. Yes, they said that when we washed the body, we could see the help of the angels. They then asked people to return. There were so many gathered, they wanted to bid farewell to Imam, but Imam had instructed that his burial had to be in secret. People are not supposed to know where Ali is buried. Yes, the man of love and compassion had to be buried in secret. I ask you, do you know why? Yes, one reason is they had so many enemies, they wanted to carve out his grave, but another reason maybe, and tonight we have to remember her. Wallah, tonight, one of the nights of Laylatul Qadr is compared to Sayyidah Fatima. We have to remember the tragedy of Sayyidah Fatima. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen perhaps wanted to somehow be linked to Sayyidah Fatima. Sayyidah Fatima's grave is hidden. He asked for his grave not to be disclosed. Imam al-Hasan and Hussein, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, a number of the close companions of the Imam, they take the body towards the direction of Najaf. Wherever they went, they saw miracles. They saw trees bowing down. They came towards the grave which was dug by Prophet Noor. They buried Amir al-Mu'mineen in that dark early hours of the morning of the 21st of the month of Ramadan, with tears in their eyes, with their hearts broken. The riwayah says once they finished the burial, they walked back. They were going back from Najaf towards Kufa. They saw a man in the side of the streets weeping profusely. They came to this man. They said to him, "Oh man, what are you crying for? What's wrong with you?" They said to them, "Oh people, for the last so many months and years, I am a lonely individual. I have no one on this world. Yet there was a man who came to me every night. He would feed me, he would talk to me, he would keep me company." They said, "Did you ask his name?" He said, "I asked him his name." He said, "Don't worry about my name, just pray for me. But oh people, the last 3 days I haven't seen him and I miss him." Allahu Akbar. They said, "Describe him to us. What are his features?" He begins to describe the features. Imam al-Hasan al-Hussein break down. They say, "Hada Abuna Ali ibn Abi Talib." This is our father Ali. He says to them, "Billahi alaykum, I ask you, tell me what happened to your father Ali. Where is he now? I miss him." They said, "We just came back from his burial. He was struck 3 days ago by the La'in ibn Muljam." The man falls on the ground. Yes, the riwayah says he begged them, said, "Please take me to his grave. I beg you, I want to bid farewell." They took him to the grave of Imam Ali. The moment he reached the grave, he threw himself on the grave. He began to slap his face. He began to pick up rocks and indeed slam it on his head and cried out, "Wa Aliya wa Imama. Why, oh why did I not know it's you, oh Ali? I wish I could have served you like you served me. I wish I could have repaid some of what you did to me." Then he raised his hands. He said, "Ya Allah, I can't live in this life anymore. I beg you, for the sake of this man who's buried here, take my life away. I do not want to live a life without Ali, without Amir al-Mu'mineen." At that moment, the riwayah says that he collapsed, he died. Yes, he could not bear the notion and the feeling of being without the Imam, isn't it? I wonder when Imam al-Hasan and Hussein returned, what did they tell Sayyida Zainab, Kulthum? What did they inform them of the burial of their father Ali ibn Abi Talib? Allah, because it was Sayyida Zainab that night of Shami Gharibaha. That night she was asking for her father Ali, isn't it? She cried out, Abatah wa Aliyah, look at your son Hussein all alone on the plains of Karbala. Zainab had a special relationship with Amir al-Mu'mineen. That's why the riwayah says on that night, who did she see in her dream? Yes, narration says that she missed the child of Imam al-Hussein. She came out in her dream in the plains of Karbala, looking left and right, until she saw a man on a horse carrying that child, picking that child up. She didn't recognize the man. She came close to that man, looked at him and said, oh man, may Allah reward you for looking after the orphan of Aba Abdullah. The man dismounted from his horse, walked slowly towards Zainab, lifted his head from the ground, placed the child on the ground, then said, my daughter Zainab, it's me, your father Ali. Don't you recognize me, my daughter? Allahu Akbar. Sayyida Zainab, seeing her father Ali, yes, the riwayah says it's as if she would say, oh father, don't blame me. I wish you saw what I saw today in Karbala. I wish you saw the arrow in the throat of Asghar. I wish you saw the arrow in the eyes of Abbas. Father, I had to pick the body of Awn and Muhammad. Father, I had to see Ali and Al-Akbar's body into pieces. Father, I had to pick up the body of Qasim. Father, I had to see Shimr sit on the chest of Hussein.